Not the other bit. All right, so your credentials as a friend of the environment are well known. But there is a huge body of science now who claim to be friends of the environment, and they say our problems boil down to global warming generated by man. In other words, the CO2 from burning fossil fuels primarily and other greenhouse gases. And you actually say stuff and nonsense.
Absolutely, I can prove it to you.
Prove it.
I should have had my other T-shirt on at this point with a picture of Marilyn Monroe on it with her skirt being blown up. Now, I'm 76, and when I see that picture, my temperature goes up, followed by the CO2 I breathe out. And when we look at all the ice cores that we studied, that's exactly what happens. The temperature goes up, and then CO2 is pouring out of the sea, and so it's not the driver of global warming.
Oh, hang on a second. You were saying that whatever we burn in our cars and our power stations, that's, of course, producing CO2. But you're saying there's a lot of CO2 in the sea, and if, for other reasons, the temperature rises, the ocean temperatures rise, and loads of CO2 comes out.
And the other thing, if we actually wanted to double the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, we'd have to burn all the known gas, all the known oil, and 1/3 of all the known coal reserves. We couldn't actually do it. We'd have to clone Arthur Scargill and bring them back again. So again, and that would put the temperature up at the most by 2 degrees centigrade.
But
so
you
get CO2.
You know it is warmer than it used to be. I mean, we all can anecdotally say, I remember as a kid, the night before I got up for school, I would throw a milk bottle full of water on the footpath outside, and the next morning I'd have a slide. Can't do that anymore. It just doesn't happen.
Well, it's what's happening at this moment. In fact, over the last decade, the temperature has not gone up, despite the fact we are pouring more CO2 into the atmosphere. And it's, and the link there, I mean, if you are putting more CO2 into the atmosphere, why isn't the temperature going up? And in the last 2 years, the whole of that rise of temperature, 0.7 of a degree centigrade, that's all it was, has disappeared.
It's gone.
It's gone, yes. And we are now, if you look at the real data, which are the sunspots on the sun, we are heading for 30 damn cold years. And they've already started.
So that's your theory, that it is the sun, the activity of sunspots, that causes the rise in temperature?
Absolutely. Not my theory. A theory of about 34,000 damn good scientists.
So you can predict the cycles of sunspots, and therefore you can predict when it's going to get warmer and when it's going to be colder?
Yeah, because there are cycles. And when we don't have any sunspots, that means we don't have those great big plumes of energy coming from the sun, we get colder. And when we do have
I think people who don't know you or don't know much about you, who maybe think of, punk initially, and then maybe think of some of the wilder designs of wishes, they'd be surprised to find you campaigning for some of them. They'd be surprised to find you engaged in that way. But you're very much in touch with what's going on, even if you're not particularly au fait with the media, even if you don't watch TV or read magazines. You're very much part of the modern world, aren't you?
Shall we say why I asked if I could come on this programme?
Well, yes, you see, here's the thing.
I asked if I
Vivian
could come
phoned up and asked to come on the show, and that's quite unusual. Well, it's not unusual that people ask, but it's unusual that people we actually want to have on ask. But Vivian called because there was a specific thing that was, well, I don't know whether troubling as well, but certainly you're concerned about, okay, and that is climate change. Okay, so now when did this become an issue for you? Because obviously there's been a lot of talk about climate change over the last 10 years or so, but it's changing, and people are addressing it perhaps in a different way now than ever before. What was the turning point for you?
About a year ago, I read an interview, and it was an interview with James Lovelock, who's 90 years old this year, and he's absolutely brilliant. And he has got this idea, he's been warning about this situation since the 70s. And he said that unless we stop climate change, stop it, reverse it, then by the end of the century there will only be 1 billion people left. And apparently by the middle of the century there's going to be 10 billion. And I just was so shocked and so upset, because immediately you imagine the suffering. You can't imagine it. It's unimaginable. Nobody will be able to help each other in this world that gets hotter and hotter, less and less of it. Wars, famine, migrations. I mean, it's just something inconceivable. But the thing that actually really traumatised me is that we could stop it as well. You know, it doesn't have to happen.
In what way can we stop it? Because I think most people are aware of climate change now, and I think most people, there were a handful of people early on, or people saying, no, I don't believe in it, and I think the facts of this story, and I think most of those voices have been quietened now. You know, I think we're all trying to do something, but it does seem somehow like maybe the answer isn't with the individual, or is it individuals? What do you think the answer is?
The reason I asked to come on your show is that you have a lot of viewers. And I think we can only be saved by public opinion. And I think the scientists are giving us all the science, all the information, but it's not getting through to people. And I think it's not getting through because politicians are treating it like it's one thing on a list of things to do. And actually it's the first problem and the last problem, and everything in between, the financial crisis, whatever, are all symptoms of this problem. And we are facing something. I mean, human race, you can say, OK, it's a little blip on the story of evolution. We're not going to last forever. The suffering is not acceptable. We can't have that.
Well, when people, yeah.
No, anyway. Listen, Jonathan, I've got to say one thing on this programme, and if you don't edit it, and if I can say that, it'll be my reason for coming on. And this is what I really want to say, and it involves some figures, and it'll take a couple of minutes.
Well, let's get a move on then.
Yeah. And now then, so what we're talking about is how much greenhouse gas there is in the air. Now then, up until the Industrial Revolution, it was between 180 and 300 parts per million. And this was the case for 65,000 years. Since then, it's been going up, and it's nearly 400 parts per million. And 400 parts per million is this famous 2 degrees of heat that we keep hearing about. And the thing is that if it goes beyond that, it's happening all the time, but if it goes beyond that, you get this chain reaction which gets so fast and so powerful. One thing affects another, but then everything affects everything else, and it accelerates and accelerates. So you've got runaway global warming, and you can't stop it. And by the time it gets to 3 degrees, but even probably before, you say goodbye to the rainforest. You say goodbye to it. Now, no money could buy the worth that gives us. The public need to know all this.
So essentially we need to act
So
soon.
that's a kind of... Yeah, I mean, if you're going to reverse it, the speed with which you do it is the most important thing. What you do today is better than what you do tomorrow.
We need some leaders. We need some people to step forward who tell us what to do, because I think we're all kind of on the same page with this.
We need government policy, and we need these issues really, really talked about.
I mean, where do you stand on our current politicians, our leaders? I know you're a big fan of Prince Charles, aren't you?
Yeah.
Which some people would find surprising. They would think that was surprising that you were.
Well, he's not elected, is he?
No, that's true.
But he's doing more than any politician I've ever heard of in my lifetime. And he's got a structure in place to save the rainforest.
Yeah, he has a website you can visit called www.rainforestsos.org. And that's, he's trying to gather names, isn't he, so that people will...
That's one thing that somebody can do. You can sign up to that. It's something you can do. You've got to get involved.
It's clearly something you're very passionate about right now. It's clearly something, it's obviously something which is...
The human race, yeah. I mean, is it going to survive? I mean, yeah, that's... We should get passionate about that.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you very, very, very much.
Just before you